The third time I saw my husband's car shaking in the garage, my marriage ended. But 2 weeks earlier, I had seen it twice and told myself it was nothing. I was wrong. My name is Renee Calloway. I am 41 years old, and for 11 years I believed I had built something solid. A home in Columbus, Ohio. A daughter named Chloe, who was 9 and loud and loved badly. A husband named Mark, who I thought was steady. I was the one holding everything together. I just didn't know yet that the thing I was holding together had already been broken from the inside. The changes started in early October, about 4 months before everything came apart. Mark had always been a 6 o'clock man, shoes off at the door, same routine for a decade. But that month, 6 became 7. Then 7 became 8. When I asked, he said a big project had come in and the team was stretched thin. I believed him. I had no reason not to. He had never given me a single reason to doubt him in 11 years. That trust, the kind you build slowly and give freely, was exactly what he used against me. And I wouldn't understand that until it was far too late to matter. His phone habits changed too. He used to leave it on the kitchen counter while we ate. Face up, not a thought given. But in October, it went everywhere with him. The bathroom, the garage, the backyard when he took out the trash. I told myself big projects meant late calls. I made excuses before he even had to ask. He also started showering the moment he walked in the door, before dinner, before sitting down, before anything. And a new cologne appeared on his bathroom shelf. A brand I didn't recognize. None of it was proof. But the feeling that had settled into my chest wasn't nothing. I just kept calling it nothing anyway. The first time I saw the car shaking was a Tuesday in early November. Mark had come home just after 8. I was cleaning up after putting Chloe to bed when I glanced through the kitchen window toward the garage. The side door was open a few inches. His car was in there, engine off, but I could see it, just barely, rocking, slowly, side to side. I stood very still and watched. Then I told myself the obvious. He was tired, shifting around, maybe stretching his back. Long day, heavy project. I went back to washing dishes. I did not let myself wonder. I did not ask. I just turned away from the window and kept moving. He came inside about 15 minutes later looking completely normal. He kissed me on the cheek, asked how Chloe's day went, poured a glass of water. Nothing about him seemed off. I almost brought up what I had seen, but stopped myself. What would I even say? That I saw his car move and it scared me? That sounded paranoid. That sounded like the kind of thing jealous wives said before they embarrassed themselves. I had always been the calm one, the reasonable one, the woman who didn't make things into something they weren't. So I said nothing, and I went to bed. And I told myself I was fine. The second time was 9 days later, a Thursday night, again after 8. Again, Chloe was already asleep. I was folding laundry at the kitchen table when I saw the garage light click on through the window. Mark's car had just pulled in. I wasn't trying to watch, but something made me stop and look. The car was rocking again. The same slow, rhythmic movement as the first night. I stood at the window for a full minute, maybe longer. The movement didn't stop. My stomach tightened, and still, I walked away. I set down the shirt I was folding, walked to the bedroom, and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. I told myself it was nothing, but I didn't believe it this time. I want to be honest about what I did next, which was nothing, and I want to be honest about why. Chloe was 9. We had a mortgage, shared friends, 11 years built together. The idea of what the truth might cost me was more frightening than the truth itself. So for 2 weeks I chose to look away, not because I was weak, because I was terrified. That is something I have had to make peace with. Choosing blindness for a little while when you sense what's coming is not stupidity, it's survival. But the truth has a way of refusing to wait. And on the third night, it stopped waiting. It was a Friday in late November, just before Thanksgiving. Chloe was at my mother's house for a sleepover. Mark had texted at 6 to say he'd be late again. I ate alone, watched half a movie, and was about to turn off the lights when I heard the garage door open just after 9. I went to the kitchen for water and glanced toward the garage window out of habit. The car was there, the light inside was dim, and the car was moving, the same movement. Slow, rhythmic, unmistakable. I stood at that window for 10 full seconds, and then I put on my shoes. The cold hit me the moment I stepped outside, Sharp, November cold, the kind that clears your head instantly. I crossed the driveway slowly. The garage side door was open just a few inches. I could see the car through the gap. The rocking was soft but very clear. My heart was loud in my ears. I reached the driver's side window and stood there for just 1 second. And then I looked. My husband was in the driver's seat. A woman was on top of him, her back to me, dark hair loose around her shoulders. They were completely unaware I was there. I stood at that window and I did not move. She turned her head slightly and I saw her face in profile. I recognized her immediately. It was Amber Voss, my best friend of 7 years. The woman who had been in my wedding, who had held my hand in the hospital when Chloe was born, who came to our house for dinner at least twice a month and hugged me goodbye at the door. Amber, my best friend, in my husband's car, in my garage. The betrayal wasn't just Mark's, it was doubled. And the second half of it, Amber's half, cut deeper than anything I had ever felt in my life. I walked back into the house. I didn't bang on the window. I didn't scream. I sat down at the kitchen table in the same chair where I had eaten dinner alone 2 hours before. I don't know how long I sat there before Mark came inside, smelling of that new cologne and freshly washed hands. He said, "Hey," like it was any other night. He opened the fridge. He asked if there was anything left from dinner, and I looked at this man I had given 11 years to, and I said, "There's pasta on the stove." Because I needed one more night, one night to think clearly, one night to decide exactly how I was going to fight. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark next to him, and by 3 a.m, one thing was clear. I could fall apart, or I could be smart. Falling apart would feel good for about 10 minutes. Being smart would protect Chloe and make sure Mark could not walk away from this marriage with everything he didn't deserve. I had watched my friend Donna go through a divorce 2 years earlier. Too broken to fight, too hurt to think. Her husband walked away with more than he should have. I was not going to be Donna. I was going to be something he hadn't seen coming. I was going to be prepared. The next morning, while Mark showered, I unlocked his phone, our anniversary date, a number that clearly meant more to me than to him. I found a contact saved only as A, no last name, no photo. The messages went back almost 4 months. Plans, pet names, a thread full of everything a wife is never supposed to read. The most recent message, sent right before he pulled into our garage the night before, said, "That was exactly what I needed. Same time next week?" I forwarded every screenshot to my personal email and put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went downstairs and made Chloe's breakfast like nothing had happened. I pulled up our joint bank account on the shared laptop while Mark was dropping Chloe at school. 3 months of small cash withdrawals, restaurant charges at places I'd never been, and a hotel charge 40 minutes outside Columbus on a Saturday in October, a day Mark had told me he was at a work training. I photographed every transaction. Then I called Beverly Cross, a family attorney a coworker had mentioned 2 years earlier. I had saved the number without knowing why. Beverly was calm and direct. "Do not tip him off," she told me. "Act normal. Gather everything. Then we move." I followed every word. For 2 weeks, I played the role of the unsuspecting wife. Dinners, conversations, smiles. I watched Mark lie to my face every single day, and I nodded and said nothing and saved everything. I pulled together the mortgage papers, retirement accounts, both car titles, the life insurance policy. I made copies and kept them at my mother's house. And on Beverly's advice, I installed a small security camera in the garage, discreet, angled at the driveway. It captured everything I needed on its very first Friday night. Amber's face, clearly lit by the driveway light as she walked to her car parked around the corner. Clear. Undeniable. Exactly what we needed. Beverly filed the divorce petition on a Wednesday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. When the sheriff arrived at Mark's office to serve him the papers, I was sitting across from Beverly with a cup of coffee. Mark called my cell phone 3 times in a row. I let every call go to voicemail. Beverly looked at me. "Ready?" she said. "More than ready," I told her. And I meant it. I had spent 2 weeks grieving in silence, grieving Mark, grieving Amber, grieving the version of my life I thought I had. By that Wednesday morning, the grief was done. What was left was just the work. Mark came home that evening looking like a man who had been hit by something he never saw coming. He walked through the front door and stared at me. I was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. I looked back without flinching. He asked if we could talk. I told him all communication would go through Beverly. He said, "Renee, come on, don't do this to our family." I held his gaze for a long moment. Then I said the line I had been turning over in my mind for 2 weeks. "You destroyed this marriage in the garage, Mark. I just finished it in the courtroom." He had nothing to say to that. He slept on the couch. 2 days later, he was gone. Telling Chloe was the hardest moment of all of it. I sat with her on her bed, just the two of us, and explained as gently as I could that her dad and I would not be married anymore, but that we both loved her completely and that would never change. She cried. I held her for a long time. She asked if it was her fault. I made her look right at me when I said, "Absolutely not for one single second." Later, after she was asleep, I went to the bathroom and let myself fall apart, just for a few minutes. Then I washed my face. I had more work to do. The divorce proceedings moved fast. The evidence Beverly had was clean and overwhelming. The affair was documented. The financial trail was clear. The camera footage was sharp. Mark's attorney knew the position his client was in. By March, 4 months after I filed, we settled. I kept the house. I kept primary custody of Chloe, with Mark getting every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. I received my fair share of the retirement accounts and a cash settlement that directly reflected the marital funds Mark had spent on the affair. He signed without much of a fight. I think he just wanted it over. So did I. But my version of over came with everything I had earned. Amber called me once, 3 weeks after the divorce was filed. I let it ring. Then I blocked her number. There was nothing she could say that would change what I had seen or what she had done. Some people think betrayal from a best friend hurts less than betrayal from a husband. It doesn't. In some ways, it's worse, because you never build walls against a best friend. You leave yourself completely open. Amber had walked through every part of my life, my home, my kitchen table, my daughter's birthday parties, and she had used all of it. That loss was its own kind of grief. I let myself feel it. Then I let it go. I heard through mutual friends that Mark and Amber didn't last. The relationship had not survived being exposed. I won't pretend I felt sorry, but I also didn't spend much energy on it. I had Chloe. I had the house. I had a life that was mine now in a way it hadn't been before, smaller in some ways, but cleaner. My mother came over on Sundays. My sister called every few days. The people who had actually loved me had been there the entire time, steady and waiting. I had just been too inside my marriage to fully see them. Now I could. Something shifted in me during those months that I didn't expect. The dental hygienist job I had always treated as part-time, secondary, less than, I started seeing it differently. I was good at it. I was calm under pressure, and I knew how to pay close attention to things others missed. My supervisor, Dr. Hartley, had been pushing me for 2 years to take on a patient coordinator role with more hours and more responsibility. I had always said I'd think about it. In January, I said yes. It was a small move, but it was mine, and it felt different from anything I had done in a long time. By spring, Chloe had adjusted better than I feared she would. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, though they carry more than they show. She started asking harder questions around April, about love, about promises, about what happens when people change. I answered as honestly as I could for a 10-year-old. I told her that people sometimes make terrible choices, that it doesn't mean love wasn't real once, that it doesn't make her any less loved now. She listened carefully. Then she said, "But you're okay, right, Mom?" I looked at her. "Yes," I said, "I really am." And for the first time, I meant it fully. About 6 months after the divorce was final, I started writing. A journal first. Just a way to move through what I had felt and seen and chosen during those cold November weeks. Then it became something more. I wrote about knowing the truth and still having to act normal, about the focus that kicks in when survival takes over. I shared some of it in an online group for women going through divorce. The response overwhelmed me. Women wrote from across the country saying my words had helped them find their footing. I hadn't expected that. I hadn't written it for anyone but myself. But it turned out the truest things usually reach the furthest. The third time I saw that car shaking, I finally chose to see the truth. Not because I was ready, but because some truths will not wait. What I found at that garage window broke something in me that will never go back to exactly the way it was. But what grew in its place is steadier, quieter, mine. I am Renee Calloway. I have a daughter who laughs loudly and asks hard questions and deserves a mother who chose honesty over comfort. That November night did not destroy my life. It ended the version of my life that had already been a lie, and it gave me back to myself. That, in the end, was the only thing worth keeping.